Hi, my relatives. On today's episode of Our Storytellers, it's a very special one for me. We're actually joined by my brother, Niklaus Brueckert, Kehew Napew. Nick is of mixed descent. He's Sḳwx on his mother's side and Swiss. And he is from German descent on his father's side. Nick has an amazing story. I think that there's a lot to learn from Nick's story. And I was really excited to have him on. And he was gracious enough to let us test some new equipment on him. And we actually went out to his home to visit him as well, too. So a little bit of a different episode for us because we're on the road. But Nick is a leader. He's an amazing brother. He is someone that always has an ear for somebody. And it was just great to be the brother with an ear this time. And I'm really excited to share his story. And I think he's really excited too. So I think without further ado, please welcome to the podcast my brother, Niklaus Brueckert.
Hello, my relatives. How are you? Here at Our Storytellers, we care about your spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical well-being, which is why we want to inform you that this podcast discusses topics that may cause trauma to listeners and viewers. These subjects include mentions of Indian residential schools, assimilation, ongoing harm, colonial impacts, and much more. Our Storytellers recognizes the need to minimize the risks associated with traumatic subject matter. The Hope for Wellness helpline offers immediate help to all Indigenous people across Canada. It is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to offer immediate support and crisis intervention. Services are available in English and French, and in Nehanee, Anishinaabe and Inuktitut upon request. If you or someone you know are experiencing any harm, no matter how big or small it's perceived to be, you can call the toll-free helpline at 1-855-242-3310 or connect to the online chat at www.hopeforwellness.ca. Kinanaskuman, I'm grateful for you. Your ancestors are always with you. All my relations, Riel.
Okay, Nick, welcome to the pod. Boom, you're gone. Here. One sec.
The chair.
I was scared of the chair. Nick, my brother, thank you so much for letting me test equipment on you for 2 hours. And for, and for coming on the pod. And this blanket and tobacco is for you. I know that the tobacco is not your usual brand, but thank you so much for coming on the pod and coming to share some stuff and just to hang out for a bit. Boom.
Well, thanks for having me, Riel.
Introduce yourself to the crowd in your own way, my friend.
Okay.
Wait, maybe I should introduce myself too.
Okay.
Hi, Nick. I'm Riel, your brother. Métis from Nehanee and Soto background. And I think our families are pretty intertwined now. But yeah, that's for coming on the podcast. And in all seriousness, thank you. Please introduce yourself in your own way.
Okay. Well, my name is Niklaus Paul Brueckert. Kehew Napew. That would be my traditional name, which I received at a Sundance recently. And that would be my adult name that I'll carry with me into through my adulthood. I have Indigenous and German descent. German on my father's side, Indigenous on my mother's side, and Swiss. And it's a pleasure to be here on the podcast with you, Rael.
Boom. No big deal. What Sundance were you at when you got your name?
I was at a Sundance. I think it was Ken Saddleback's.
In Alberta.
Nice.
For those of you watching at home, I don't know how much of that first part is going to be edited and cut out. That might have been my definitely not my best delivery of protocol I've ever given in my entire life. So we'll see how that works out. But I mean, for those of you that don't know about how our family is structured, I always say on a date that if I had to draw out my family tree, it would take me all day. And the reason why is because my dad and Nick's mom have been together since, how old were we? 11.
11, yeah.
And my first memory hanging out with Nick was staying over at your house in Abbotsford. And what were we doing? Playing Grand Theft Auto 4 until 2 in the morning. And your mom came down and gave us shit. And yeah, that was the beginning of it all, pretty much. But I mean, maybe let's start at the beginning, Nikki. Like, how did you, like, what's your earliest memory that you
My
can remember?
earliest memory. Wow. That would take me quite a ways back. I don't remember, being born. Probably one of my earliest memories that I remember was being I think we were at Osprey Drive. This was a little house that I used to live at with my parents and my siblings. And I was actually being scolded by my grandmother. Not blood related grandmother, but grandmother nonetheless, Nancy. And I was outside. They were trying to clean me up and scolding me because I wasn't letting them clean me up.
What were you doing that got you so dirty?
I was probably playing around in the dirt or something like that, to that effect, or just playing out in the backyard.
How old were you?
I was like, man, probably 5, 6.
Interesting. So that was back in Osprey, which is in
Abbotsford.
Abbotsford.
Yes.
So you lived in Abbotsford first, right?
Yes.
And your mom and dad were together at the time, I guess.
Yes, they were.
And then where to after Abbotsford? Or was it Abbotsford the whole time?
It was Abbotsford for a while. We moved to different places in Abbotsford. And then after that, we tried Delta for a while because my mom was working at Fisheries and Oceans. And it was an easier commute from Delta, Ladner. And then after that, we went back to Abbotsford. And then I think we went to Mission.
Right. So we have a sister,
Yes.
right? We have how many brothers? 2 more,
Yes.
Brandon and Tyler. And I don't know, like, what was growing up like for you? Like, how did you enjoy it?
A lot of playing video games.
Yeah.
That's mostly what I remember from my childhood. I had a pretty good childhood. I had pretty much anything I wanted when I wanted it. So a little bit spoiled. But I enjoyed playing video games, reading books off and on. I like doing outdoor activities. Like walking is probably the main one. Exercising, once I hit high school, became something I was pretty passionate about. I really enjoyed that a lot. Hanging out with different friends. When I was younger, I played sports, team sports. I played soccer. I played, what else did I play? Soccer, hockey, and those are the 2 like team sports I remember. I've always been an asthmatic, so that kind of affected my ability to perform in soccer and in some of those team sports. That's why I like the exercise in the gym, working out more, because it's more like personally focused. I can choose what I want to work on, and I can also wear headphones, so that's nice. I can block out the rest of the noise in there and just focus on myself.
Sweet. What do you think are some significant events that happened in your childhood that you'd like to talk about?
Significant events that happened in my childhood that I'd like to talk about. Well, probably my first encounter with death was the death of my grandfather, Bruce, and it was a little bit weird for me because I wasn't really exposed before that, except for my dogs passing away or having to be put down. And it was kind of difficult to regulate my emotions. I picked up on a lot of what was going on around me, so a lot of my family's emotions at the ceremony being held for him. Um,
You know what's so interesting about that, man, is that
what?
like I remember when Bruce passed away. I also remember when Bruce got lost one time in the
Oh
truck. Do you
yeah,
remember that? But I never, ever, and maybe this says more about me than it does about you, but I never ever even noticed that you didn't like know, like you were struggling with like how to process it.
yeah. I was struggling a lot with how to process it. I don't think I knew, and I didn't really have many healthy coping strategies back then. It was probably the beginning of a deep depression that I sunk into. I actually never really thought about it in that way before the sequence of events and that leading up to it. But I think that may have been a root cause of a major depression that I went into.
Really? How old were we? 14, 13.
Probably 13, 14 years old, yeah.
Where were we? We were in Abbotsford, Mission.
Mission, I
We
believe.
were in Mission, but we were at the Cedar House.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense timeline wise. Wow. Wow. I haven't even thought about this for a really long time, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But the last time I encountered your grandfather in the spirit world was when Mom was moving from Alberta from BC to Alberta, and we were living together at the house, and I remember him being so angry that she was still in Vancouver. And like I remember like being in the house and being like, holy smokes, like, Mom, you gotta get out of here. Like and just hearing him be so angry.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I've never encountered that before. I only met your grandfather like a handful of times. Usually he was showing my dad the same guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, he always was showing us.
Yeah.
But
He did have a lot of medals.
he did have a lot of medals. He was a really good shooter, and
Yeah.
he was like a Swiss like super shooter,
Yeah. Sharpshooter.
sharpshooter, super shooter. So anyway, we'll get back to it. Sorry, I was just thinking about that because like that just reminded me of hearing him that one time. But so that was 13, 14 when we're going through that sent you through a little bit of a depression. I didn't know about that. Like what was going on?
I think my mood was just slowly declining. Like it was slowly starting to go down, and
Those are your face. Yeah.
I was focusing on like really big questions in life, um, finding myself, finding my purpose, my reason for being alive. So I had a lot of those questions in my mind around that time, and that I think factored into it. Could have been a mixture of a lot of different things, like the music I was listening to, the people I was hanging out with. I know it was a little bit after we had reached, I think, grade 9 or grade 10. I started using cannabis. So that started sort of the substance use portion of the past for me. Yeah, I think it was a number of different things that kind of led up to it eventually, cascading over into this like massive depression.
Right, right. When you're talking about the massive depression, like what what part of the timeline is that at? Like what age is that at?
I think it was a few years after that it really started to set in. So I think it was probably closer to when I was 16 or 17. I noticed I wasn't very happy with life. I wasn't thinking very positive thoughts. I also had a very kind of distorted view of the world as well because I thought that I had no good memories to draw from. I thought most of my memories were bad or just simply like not quite what I thought they were. And using substances kind of, well, it did continue to affect that distortion and kind of make things more difficult for me to manage and cope with. But before I had even used any substances, I feel like I was already sinking into that depression. And I think I was using the substances to cope with that.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So you were sinking in depression, thinking about your purpose in that, and the substances were a coping mechanism to deal with that uncertainty, would you say?
With the uncertainty, yeah. And also low mood.
Low mood.
Because I know when I was about 16, 17, I was like more moody, I guess. I feel like I was disagreeable at times. And I don't really fully know because I can't like step outside of myself per se and then look in on myself. So everybody is going to have a different kind of perception or view of me. And so I can only really know from word of mouth from people that I talk to who are close to me around that time, whether or not I was kind of feeling all right, feeling okay, or in low mood.
Okay, here's a question for you. We grew up going to ceremony and from a really creator-driven household, I would say, a creative focus, ancestor focus. I guess, like, maybe that part kind of came into your guys' life when my dad showed up.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess it was a little bit new, probably a bigger adjustment, stuff like that. But like,
Yeah.
was the thought of ceremony or creator like during these times between we're 14 and 17 years old, like, is that ever crossing your mind, or are you like just ignoring that kind of side?
It did cross my mind, and I had some interesting experiences at the Sundances we went to with Tom McCallum.
Yeah.
Like I had this one experience that I've related to my mom, I related to Yvonne Munchie, and some other people that I couldn't explain or put my finger on quite what it was, but just a few different things that were kind of different that happened while we were at Sundance. This one time, I was laying on my back after ceremony had kind of ended for the evening and the dancers were going to bed. I was laying down in my tent and I felt this feeling of extreme euphoria and bliss while I was laying on my back there, and this is prior to me ever using any substances. And I couldn't tell what it was, but it felt really good, obviously. And then the other experience I had was I was in the arbor and there was singing, drumming going on, ceremony, and all of a sudden I felt this like sensation like I had to either sit down or lay down or else I would fall over. But at the time, being young and just the way that the Sundance was held, I didn't know I was allowed to sit down or anything like that. So I just kind of tried to push through it until I couldn't anymore, and then I think I did eventually sit down. But it was so overpowering and overwhelming, this sensation of like vertigo.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Wow, I've never heard this story before.
Never, eh?
Yeah, I don't think you ever told me this.
No, I don't think I have.
Damn. Okay. So you have these experiences at the time. Are you thinking like it's a connection to creator at the time or something like that? Or
I was thinking it was definitely a strong spiritual connection. But I didn't know what it was. It was like a big question mark in my life. I remember being younger and being exposed to Christianity and going to church and participating in the way that they hold their stuff. And then not really taking too much to it, but I think my mom did that just to give us and myself and my siblings the exposure when we were younger, so we knew what it was all about. And then talking about the creator and ancestors is more something I feel like I've been connecting with recently, probably the past couple of years, as opposed to when I was 16, 17.
Right. I mean, share what you're comfortable sharing after like 16, 17, really.
Okay.
It's your story, my friend. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay, so around in close to 16, 17, I was probably about 18 when I had that collision, would you say?
Yeah. Yeah, we were 17, 18, yeah.
Yeah. I had my
18, because you're
18.
older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had my learner's license, and around that time, there was a lot of partying going on at school. So I would go to the different kids' parties, and we'd drink, we'd use substances. And this went on for probably months on end before anything significant really happened in terms of like being cracked down on, and breaking up the friend group, and sort of before kind of a this I went into a period of isolation because of it, basically. Just the way the dice fell, the way that things played out, I wasn't connecting with the friends I was connecting with prior to this, in the same way and in the same capacity that I used to. I was withdrawing socially. I was withdrawing at home as well. I was sneaking out a lot. I spent a lot of time walking around Mission. And when I got my license and I was driving, I spent a lot of time doing that when I first got my N because I could. And I remember some nights, like, I don't think I've ever told you this, but I got stranded one time in Mission on a farm road. And I was listening to The Wall by Pink Floyd, and I was very angry. And I started punching the seat in my car just to try and express some of that anger, get it out. And then eventually my car turned off, the battery died, and I couldn't turn it back on. So I sat there and waited for a while. It was already dark out. And then sooner or later, a truck comes along the road and stops, and they ask me if I need help or what I'm doing there. And I told him my car's broke down. I can't get back. I can't turn it on. So he said, just like wait like 10 minutes. I'll be back with some jumper cables. He came back, jumped my car. I went home. And then I just kind of kept spiraling with the substances. Like I didn't stop using them. And I started using a wider variety of things. I think my substance of choice at the time had been cough syrup. At least that's the one that gave me the most issues. And it wasn't like your typical codeine cough syrup that you buy at the drugstore that you need a prescription for. It was this over-the-counter stuff that you can just purchase anywhere. I don't know whose bright idea that was.
Governments, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've never heard that story. See, like, I don't know. Like, growing up, like, to me, it was always just kind of like, I feel like we never really checked in on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it just seemed like, oh, like, Nick's quiet, but you were thinking, like, that whole time behind the scenes. Of course you were.
Yeah.
Not that we didn't think that you weren't thinking, but, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think so, yeah.
like, we just didn't check in.
Just didn't really know something else was going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Never asked. Like, we were like, and I'm still bad at doing this today to you and to everybody else in my life too, just so we're all clear. But, like, I don't know. I just, like, I remember us making sandwiches and going to the gym every once in a while. And, you know, we would smoke weed out the window or whatever every once in a while.
Yeah.
Go to Liam's every once in a while. Like, but I don't know. You just always had so much love.
Yeah.
Know? Like, to give.
It's weird that, like, I could have all that love, but I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. So
I think there's a difficulty perhaps in communication there with, like, expressing the care that I feel and the joy. And yeah, knowing what to do if you have a lot of love to give, but don't really know how to express that.
Yeah. So do you want to keep going, keep the timeline going, keep sharing some stories?
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
I was hanging out a lot with my best friend at the time, Noah Giroux. and Seth Manpa. And I'd go over to their place, probably Noah's place more than Seth's place because he was closer to where we lived. He was still like a 45-minute bike ride across Mission, but nonetheless, I still made the trek every summer day, I think, when we had summer break. And then, there was off and on use there too, but it was only cannabis and a little bit of drinking here and there. I don't think Seth Manput, to the best of my knowledge, was that involved with it as we were. And I think he was always kind of just not really into it. And so the friend group and the dynamic started to change as we got later on through high school. And I kind of ditched one friend group and went to another, and then I ditched that friend group and went to a third friend group. And then it just kind of dissolved everything after that. I think the substance use definitely played a big part in that.
Because you're using in isolation?
Because I'm using in isolation, yes. Because I think that was probably the most detrimental thing for me was the amount of times I used and there wasn't anyone else around, or there were people around, but not close enough to know what was going on and not close enough to me to know that I had taken something.
Are you using because you're isolated, or are you isolated because you're using, or both?
Bit of both. Probably in the beginning, it was more a social thing. Like I remember going out with friends, enjoying joints, talking to each other, going to some parties, having a couple drinks, smoking a couple joints, or having edibles. Yeah.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
That's what we did back then. All right. Yeah, keep it going. So you're splitting up between these, you're
kind of leaving one friend group, joining another, and then leaving that friend group.
Getting more isolated, using substances.
Yeah. So basically, it kind of filtered down my friends so that I was only hanging out with the people that I knew who did also use. And then very few other sober people around me. And then that group just got kind of more and more close together, close-knit, until eventually there was parental intervention, and then those friend groups basically got dissolved.
Right.
Sort of unfortunate, but it's what happened.
Right. Then you get in the accident, I guess, is coming up.
Yes, the accident is coming up. Now, the thing is, like, the timeline itself could be a little bit off because I remember using the cough syrup really messed with my perception of time. Like, you could take it and then 40 minutes later, you're like, okay, now I'm starting to feel something. And then another couple hours later, you have these moments where you feel like, did a whole day just pass? And then you look at your phone and you're like, no, it's only been like a couple of minutes. And so it really does and did alter my perception of time and the passage of time. Cannabis also does this, and alcohol, but to a lesser degree. Because I think with alcohol, you just kind of forget to look at the time, and then you don't realize it, but hours have passed. With cannabis, you can experience like time dilation, they call it, where it feels like one moment or 1 minute lasts in eternity or a very long time, and then it kind of passes. But the cough syrup, that stuff is like bonkers crazy when it comes to what it does to your system. I mean, like, first of all, there's all the additives in it that aren't good for you, and it's all of this like synthetic chemical nonsense. And then I was also using mushrooms and probably LSD at the time too. And off and on and throughout the different times I had used more or less, and then I had mixed it with different things, and then I tried all sorts of different combinations trying to find, I guess, like alchemical gold, just trying to distill down and find what works best for me, and how it lets me function. But obviously, as time had passed, I was beginning to see that it wasn't really helping me in the way that I thought it was. And it was only really further driving me into isolation and solitude. And then I had also been under the influence of alcohol, and this is the car accident story, one night after a party, and then the next day I immediately mixed a drink for myself in the blender. I don't know how our parents didn't find out because it was literally right in the kitchen. Actually, no, I think I brought the blender down to my room, but still, it was a little bit sketchy. And then I took a bunch of my mom's cannabis, synthetic cannabis. This stuff is called, can't remember what it's called.
Synthetic cannabis?
It's a synthetic form of cannabis used for, it's called nabalone.
Okay.
And it's used for like severe nausea. And sometimes in like chemotherapy patients, they'll give it to them. The only reason I know it's synthetic cannabis technically is because I've done a lot of research into it online and I looked into it a lot. It's how I knew how to use it in the first place.
How did you know she was taking it?
I don't really know how I came upon it in the first place, but I probably went into their bathroom when they were at work or something and was just looking for something to get high on.
Really?
Yes.
Dang. All right. Didn't know about that one.
Yeah. And so I had taken that. I had drank probably a Mickey. And then I grabbed my vehicles. I opened the door, walked over to my car, unlocked it, got in, turned on the ignition, put on my seatbelt, and then just drove out like it was a normal day, like I was driving myself to school or something.
Yeah.
That's probably why it flew under the radar for so many people too.
Yeah.
Because I don't think my intention was to get into a collision, but it was unsafe nonetheless, having that alcohol in my system and the nabalone combination. I got onto Dewdney Trunk Road and I was driving for a time and I was doing unsafe passes. And then eventually somebody did alert the RCMP and then they were tailing me for a short time. I passed a few car lengths, got back in my lane, and then I kind of lost control. I couldn't correct the steering wheel and get the car straight after I went back into my lane and I collided with a tree. My airbags didn't go off, and the only thing that kept me in the vehicle was the seatbelt that I put on. So, give myself a pat on the back.
Yeah, shout out seatbelts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. They didn't breathalyze me, which is a little bit strange, and they didn't put a neck brace on or check to see if I was injured, really. They just asked if I was okay, and then I just kind of unbuckled my seatbelt and got out and walked over with the people to the vehicle, and they transported me to the hospital, where I stayed for probably about 3 months. Near the end of high school, I was pretty much spending most of my time in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then graduation ceremony happened. I was able to go to it. And then there was a lot of talk about what to do with me and what was going on. And I got sent to the Carlisle Center in Vancouver, which was a youth facility for youths. I think like the age bracket was 16 to 19, struggling with mental health concerns.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when the depression really started to hit me, I think. I think it crystallized there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, home was not a good spot for us at that time, for anybody. I feel like for Brandon, for you.
No, I don't think for any of us.
Tyler. And at what point does the family move to North Van right now? Like right after high school?
Right after high school, I think a couple months pass. I'm in the Carlisle Center, and it's very boring in a treatment center in a place like that, by the way. A lot of days and nights of just staring at one like room. And then because it was like a live-in facility, you eat, sleep, and bathe all in the same building. Sorry, what was the question?
I had no question.
Oh,
Keep going.
Okay.
I mean, tell us about the Carlisle Center. Like,
it was
you've been in a few centers.
I have. I've been in 3 treatment centers over the course of my life so far. I went to the Carlisle Center first. It was mostly my mom's suggestion, because I don't think she knew what to do with me at the time. I was just young and kind of raring to go and using a lot. So I went to the Carlisle Center. I think I was resistant at first, and then probably for the first 4 months, I didn't know what to do there. I pretty much ate the meals they provided, slept, and that was about it. I engaged in some of the programs, but I was somewhat reluctant, and it was very difficult to get much out of me word-wise. So you could probably only hold a conversation with me for like 5 minutes before I would be at my limit. And that was the same for probably the next 4 months as well. Kind of in that deep, deep depression, they reasoned that the most reasonable course of action to take was to suggest ECT treatment or therapy, which I was okay with at the time, probably because I was feeling so dreadful. And I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. So I decided to have that therapy or that treatment, which was extremely and excruciatingly draining on my emotional and kind of mental energy levels.
Like, what is it? What is this?
They hook these electrodes up to your brain, different parts, and put you under with an anesthetic, and then run electricity through those wires into your brain and stimulate basically a medically induced seizure.
Really?
Yes.
And what's it supposed to do?
It's supposed to kind of kickstart, rewire the circuitry in your head and kind of get some, I guess, pathways up and going again, or kind of move the energy in your brain so that it kind of kicks you out of a depression.
That sounds fucking intense.
It is. It was pretty intense.
Holy shit.
I remember every time that they brought me there, I'd sit down in a wheelchair and then they'd take me from the building through the elevator down to an underground tunnel and then down this long, long tunnel and then up into, I think it was the Lionsgate Hospital, and then over to their medical wing or whatever wing that they hold this treatment in, and then being put under, anesthetized, essentially. And after, as soon as they put the IV in your arm and run the IV anesthetic through, it's like you're out in the blink of an eye.
Do they get you like 10, 9, 8?
If there was a countdown, I don't recall.
Yeah.
And if there was, it was probably by like second 6 or 8 that I was knocked out. Like complete lights out.
Yeah. How many times? Like, is it once a week?
It was like, I think I had 16 sessions by the time I was done.
Wow.
And every single day after that treatment was done, it was like excruciatingly, almost painfully, like draining on energy levels. Like I couldn't do anything after that.
You just go home and sleep.
Just go back to the unit and sleep. Yeah.
Dang. So this is at the Carlisle.
That's at the Carlisle.
So this
Center.
is right after. So I'm trying to match the timeline of what's happening. for the whole family at the time. The
Yeah.
whole family at the time. I think mid Carlisle move.
So I think that would have been probably 4 months into the Carlisle stay.
Yeah, is when that treatment starts. How long was the Carlisle stay?
I think it was the first time I was there, it was 8 months. I went back there a number of times because I had relapsed and they wanted to stabilize me again before they let me out. So yeah, I think the first time was 8 months. The second time was probably 6 months. And the last time, I think like it could have been anywhere from 4 to 6 months again.
Right, right. And I remember when you got out, I think the first time, or when you left the treatment center,
Yeah.
you went to a home.
Yes,
Group
it
home.
was like a shared living space, a group home, essentially.
Yeah, that was still in Northman.
Still in North
That
Van.
was close to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the one you're talking about is, I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was there were a few, because there was the Say House, and then there was this independent living situation where I was in a house with other people, probably like 2 or 3 other people, 3 other guys, but we were all in separate parts of the house. We had our own rooms, and we could do basically whatever we wanted to. And there was very little supervision, which in the end was a recipe for disaster. I relapsed on the cough syrup and then was brought back in.
Right. I have a question.
Yeah.
At what, like, okay, when we were kids, like you talked, we joked around and stuff like that, but never really expressed yourself like as openly or as publicly as you do now. When do you start learning this skill set?
Probably going through treatment, but not the Carlisle Center. Probably the amount of times I've spent at different hospitals. I think most of my knowledge and social skills come from hospitals.
Like learning how to speak to people.
Learning how to
in the
speak to
hospitals.
people in the hospitals, yes. So
Because-
speaking to other patients, speaking to the nursing staff, speaking to the psychiatrist, speaking to just the general physician.
Would you say it's because you had to learn?
It was because I had to learn.
Because
It
you were
was
like,
out of
oh my
necessity.
gosh, I won't be able to get anything out of this place.
If I don't
Ask.
open my mouth and start talking.
Really?
Really.
What? Yeah, oh gosh.
I know.
What, okay, that makes sense. What's like a positive influence that's happening to you at this time? Like, what's a moment that you remember from this time where you're like, oh, that actually makes sense to me. Like
I think
I can be on a better path.
drawing from my memories while I was in the Carlisle Center, I thought a lot about the Sundance that Tom McCallum held and a lot about that time. And I think it did help get me through some difficult times. Around the time after the Carlisle Center, I don't really know. I'm not sure what it was, what like my guiding light was at that time.
But what about just in general?
Just in general,
Like, did you talk to someone and you were like, okay, this person actually kind of understands?
I did actually find a number of different people that I did talk to that were like, it very much did feel like I was being seen, heard, felt, understood. And it started to change my outlook. And I don't think I would have had those experiences if I wasn't, strangely enough, in the hospital so much.
Did you ever feel seen, understood, heard when we were growing up?
I did at different parts of my life, different stages, by different people from my family.
Okay, good. I was just checking.
Yeah.
I just didn't know because, like, there were so many of us. Like,
Yeah. Difficult, and when you're the quietest one out of the bunch.
and I'm the loudest one out
Yeah.
of the bunch, like, and then there's Tyler.
And
at
then
the
there's
same time,
Tyler, yeah.
Who we love you, Tyler, gentlest giant, we love you. But then there's Tyler at the same time.
Yeah.
Then there's Brandon at the same time.
Yes.
Do you ever feel bad for our parents for like going, also from their perspective, having to learn how to do all this stuff when they might have not had the skills?
I feel like, yeah, I wouldn't be speaking honestly if I said I didn't have regrets, things that I messed up that I feel like I could have done better. And I do feel sort of shitty about putting my family through that. I don't know what it would have been right to do at the time. At the same time, I do not regret exploring substances.
Why would you regret it? You know?
I don't know. It's a learning experience.
Exactly. Why would you regret it? Okay. Let's get back to the timeline. Sorry, I got to throw a tangent in there just because I'm getting questions in my head. But, okay, so what time are we at there, Jim? Can you see how much time we got?
46 minutes.
46? Okay. So, Carlisle, in there, you're in and out of treatment centers. What's the second treatment center? Redfish?
Second treatment center, not Redfish. I'm trying to think now what it was. It kind of has disappeared from my mind. I spent so long out of there. I don't think it was the Burnaby one. The Redfish is the new place for Burnaby.
Yeah.
I did go to Burnaby. Oh, it may actually have been Burnaby.
Burnaby.
Yeah.
Burnaby. So you're in and out, in between the relapses. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Out, working on it, go back.
Pretty much, I think I'd gotten, like, the best I had done was a couple months of sobriety, and then I felt like things just weren't falling into place for me, and something would always draw me back into using.
Right. How is your confidence? Like, does it impact your confidence?
Oh, tremendously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. Okay. When does let's take it to today for now. Unless is there anything else, any stories you want to share from those times going on now?
I met a girl in the Burnaby Center that I really liked.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was nice. We spent some good time together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What did you like about her?
Pretty much everything.
Nice.
Her personality, the way she looked, the way she talked, the way I could tell that she cared about me.
Right. Right. What about her story intrigued you?
Probably because we were both in a pretty vulnerable place at the time. I mean, we were both in a treatment center.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of stuff that we could relate to each other on. But there was also obviously a whole host of other things that we couldn't relate on, just because of where we were in our lives.
Right. It should be a book.
Yeah.
You should write a book on it.
Maybe.
Okay. Is there any other stories you want to share about it?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty good for now.
That's pretty good for now. I appreciate you sharing, bro. Obviously. Like, love you so much. Let's bring it to today. Today you're going to school.
Today I am in school.
You have your school.
Yeah.
You have your own place.
Yes. It is the most independent I've been.
And how do you feel about that?
Pretty damn good.
Pretty fucking good. We can throw it out there. Pretty fucking good. Hell yeah. So what are you going to school for?
I'm going to school for Stolo history, as well as I'm upgrading English currently.
Nice. Do you have any plans, or are you just experiencing it? Like, what brought you to that path?
So I think the English upgrading is actually because I did want to kind of plan on writing a book. But at the same time, I'm somewhat hesitant about the actual writing of the book. Like how I'm going to structure it, what I'm going to talk about, what stories to put in, what stories to leave out, those sorts of things.
Can I give you some advice?
Sure.
When it comes to the podcast, it's like the podcast is my version of the book. And sometimes you just got to say, fuck it. And just do it, you know?
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's just my perspective anyway. But
I think it's also Nike's perspective.
Nike's?
Yeah.
Just fuck it.
Just do it.
Oh, that's funny. So, independent living, feeling good, reconnect to the ceremony too?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have been more actively engaged in things like sweat lodges And I've been off and on out of like basically AA groups. Most recently, I've been to an AA group, and they're okay. I like listening to their stories, and I value their advice and appreciate their perspectives.
What advice would you give to someone that's going through substance use issues or struggles?
It does get better. It's not easy. But if you're stubborn and you persist, you will succeed. Like, you can improve, you can get better. Both your mental state, your physical well-being. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Maybe difficult to hold out and difficult to try and have patience when kind of everything is falling apart around you. But if you are patient, then for sure things can change.
Would you say the rebuild is quicker than you think it is?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say so. For sure. Like, you can ask Jim, but I struggled with cannabis for a long time. Still do. If it ever came up around me, it still would be a struggle. Not that that's anything in comparison, but like, I feel like I do kind of understand what it's like to like, you know, talk yourself back into it when like you don't necessarily need to, you know? I kind of feel like I understand that. Or like, I don't know. For me, it was always like, this is the last time. That's how it always felt,
Oh, yeah.
you know? But whatever. But anyway, like, what does ceremony mean to you today?
What ceremony means to me today? I think it means quite a bit to me. There's like a certain kind of significance to it that you feel when you're there with those people. It's very good, kind of positive, loving, kind energy. And it just feels so good to be around people who are of that mind and who feel that way. I've kind of gone back and forth in my mind debating whether or not I'd like to Sundance. I know it is quite a commitment, and I'm not sure if right now I'm ready to do that. But it does mean a lot to me. I like the ceremonies. I love the space. I love the environment. I like listening to people talk. One of my favorite things to do was fire keep. I liked sitting there with my brothers or whoever was around and just keeping the fire going all night, not having any responsibilities other than the fire.
Yeah. Yeah, you were a great firekeeper. You are a great firekeeper.
I love fire keeping.
Do you firekeep for the Sweats too?
Sometimes.
Sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. You were always good at staying up late too.
Yeah.
So that's why it made you such a good firekeeper.
I've always
You
been
would
a night
firekeep
owl.
from like all night long. You would get relieved, go to bed from like 8 to noon, and then you'd be back there at like 1 and then still go all night long.
Yeah.
Back to back. Yeah, for sure. And firekeepers are all part of the ceremony too. And do you believe in a creator?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I definitely, yeah. A higher power, a creator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you believe in the ancestors?
Yes.
Have you ever, do you pray?
At times, yes.
Yeah.
In difficult times, really difficult times, I will pray. If there's pretty much no option left on the table and I don't know what to do, I'll pray. If things have gotten to that point and everything is just so chaotic that it's just like, I feel like everything's falling apart, I'll pray.
I feel like I should pray more. When you say it like that, I feel like I should pray more. Yeah. Anyway. So you're thinking about committing to a Sundance? Maybe not right now, but you'll know. I feel like you.
I feel like I'll know.
You'll just
Yeah,
feel like-
my heart will tell me.
Yeah, but okay, it's time. Yeah.
I have sage and I smudge regularly.
Every day?
Not every day, but as often as I remember to.
Yeah. What time? Like what day?
Always at a different time.
Really?
Yes.
Gotcha. Do you have a certain like method of how you smudge, or do you just go for it no matter what?
I kind of light it. I'll place it on the floor, and then I'll let my feet soak it up.
Yeah.
And then I'll kind of step over it, and then I'll even do this thing where I kneel down, touch my head just to the floor, and then afterwards stand up, do the thing, brush it on myself.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned here at the very beginning of the podcast, like I was just a kid looking for my purpose. Do you know what your purpose is now?
I'd say I'm still looking for it.
Still looking for it.
Still haven't found what I'm looking for.
Any brainstorms?
I've thought about caretaking for the land.
Mm-hmm.
Like stewardship.
I think that's a good purpose.
Yeah.
I think so. I don't even... That's such a hard question. Holy shit. Jim, what's your purpose?
Trying to expand our storytelling.
No, and hey, come say it in the microphone. Come say it. Come say it. It's our show. We can do whatever we want. Come say it.
I'm gonna edit this part out.
No. What's your purpose?
Still looking through it.
Still working through it? You too?
Yeah.
Me too.
We all are.
Yeah.
Do you ever think that our environment dictates our purpose just because it's like this the stuff that happened to us?
I would say so, yeah.
You know?
I would
Like
think
land
so.
stewardship. If you were not from a ceremonial family, do you think you'd even say land stewardship?
Difficult to say.
Exactly.
Minds can be changed.
Minds totally can be changed. Totally can be changed. How's it going over there?
Good. I'm just want to see how it is.
Anything else, Nikki?
Anything else? I don't think so, man.
You don't
I think
so?
this is pretty good.
That was not bad. Thank you for being our test today. And thank you for sharing your story. And I love you, man. You definitely have a purpose. And today it's sharing your story so others can listen to it and, you know, derive some stuff. Like when I hear you say, like when I heard you say, you know, it does get better.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I needed to hear that today.
Oh, I did think of something.
Okay, go for it.
It would be the diagnoses and like feeling like I'd been misdiagnosed when they initially brought me in and took a look at me. Because I think the first diagnosis I received was schizoaffective as well as major depressive disorder, and then they were looking at bipolar, either type 1 or type 2, which eventually they just kind of dropped the schizoaffective and the bipolar and just left it at major depressive disorder. And then I was also diagnosed at 18 as being under the autism spectrum, though high functioning, and I get lots of good kind of feedback on that. It's a lot to it's a hard pill to swallow to have so many diagnoses in such a short time and try and sift through all of that. And it made, I think, treatment and therapy tremendously confusing in a lot of ways. I don't know how it could have been done better. I don't know if it could have been done better. But it's sort of just the way that the dice fell.
So like are you saying that they had so many diagnoses on you? It almost felt like, what am I
It felt
supposed
like
to do?
being under a microscope lens almost, and also not knowing what to do, and like all of a sudden all of this new information, some of it telling me basically how I am in the world, and that kind of clashing with my worldview as well.
Like, did it feel like it kind of felt like labeled you, like this is how you are in the world, and then you were like, but before I kind of thought I could do whatever I want kind of thing. Is that how it felt?
That's kind of how it felt. It felt like, like I could be whatever I want. I could do whatever I want. I could say whatever I want. I am who I think that I am. And then after receiving a number of diagnoses, I know that it would drop my mood almost immediately. Like if I was on a phone call and then I was talking and the doctor had diagnosed me then and there. They sometimes do that over the phone, which is a little bit strange to me, but it was around the time of COVID.
Really?
So, yeah.
On the phone, Nick, you're autistic.
Not the autism diagnosis. That time it was I think, like, the most recent ones I've been given were borderline personality disorder and then the autism one that just kind of stuck.
BPD?
BPD, yes, borderline personality disorder.
You have to teach me about this stuff because I have no idea what it's. I have no
Okay,
idea.
it is separate from
Bipolar?
Yeah. I think both are mood disorders, but borderline personality disorder is different than bipolar, and I don't know myself too many of the details. I haven't brushed myself up on them recently. I used to know, like, the things that made you bipolar type 1 or type 2, or borderline personality. I think it's difficulty in relationships, communication. I think that BPD can cause a lot of difficulties in relationships, mostly, is the main thing that I remember.
Like, okay. Like, because you would have trouble expressing yourself? Or because you express
Perhaps.
yourself in different ways? I don't know. I
I
literally
think-
don't know. I'm sorry, everybody that knows
That's
about
okay.
this.
With I think the difficulty in expressing myself and the communication mostly would stem from the autism, though I don't know myself for sure where it exactly comes from.
I feel like you're trained now.
Sort of. I know the names of more medication than I need to know for a variety of illnesses that at the time I don't even know if I was being treated for the right thing.
Yeah.
I've been on so many different courses of medication and it's been difficult to find the right ones.
Do you almost wish that they didn't tell you what you had?
Almost, yes.
Like they'd be like, "Yeah, Nick, no problem." Like, do you feel like it made the
If
goal?
they were just like,
did it feel make the goal feel so much farther away?
Kind of like if they told me you're just a young kid with a lot of hormones running through your system and you're using substances and this is affecting your mental state and your perception of reality, that likely would have been a lot easier than all the diagnoses and the courses of medication.
Shit, I would have never thought about that. That's crazy. That makes total sense though.
Yeah.
Because it like frames the recovery in like a achievable manner almost.
Yeah. It does. Let's just say that, yeah.
Rather than like being like, you have this problem probably forever. Good luck.
Yeah, because that's pretty much what the diagnosis is. It's just like a blanket term or a statement that describes a subset of different sort of symptoms for whatever psychiatric illness. And I think a lot of the information on it comes from the DSM-5 or the DSM, whichever diagnostical statistics manual is most current. Which once again is also being updated like constantly as we discover more about mental well-being, mental illness, and such things.
Wow. My mind is blown right now.
And I'm not, medically trained or a doctor or anybody like that.
Of course not. Neither of us are.
No.
Except for Jim. He's a doctor.
I only
He's a
know
doctor of cameras.
I can only draw from my personal lived experience.
So that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
It's like saying like I don't know. It just it would make sense. Like if it happened to me, I would be like, okay, how do I get better from that? And then you're like, you just have it.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing with these diagnoses. Like, it's like with the autism one. It's not like there's any pill that I can be given that's going to make autism go away. I'm going to have like autistic meltdowns. I'm going to have moments of difficulty. I'm going to have the symptoms of that come up daily. And I just have to learn how to manage and cope with those things. But with something like depression, you can come out of a depression, but you can't come out of an autism, so to speak. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. You can't come out of an autism, but you can come out of a depression.
Yeah, and then different psychiatric illnesses as well, like are ones that you don't really come out of, per se. Like I think schizophrenia is one of the other ones that is a pretty severe one. That like if you have it, then you could very well be experiencing hallucinations the most of your life,
Yeah.
if it gets triggered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which once again I don't know too much about.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Interesting. Any other points you want to hammer home?
I don't
you just
think
gave me
so.
you just gave me a fucking whole lesson today
Yeah.
with that one point alone. Cuz like it makes no sense. Like how are you supposed to like everybody wants to live a good life, I feel like,
Yeah.
right?
Mostly as free of suffering as you can be.
As free as you can. Yep, minimizing suffering. Maybe that is the meaning of life. If we want to get philosophical on this town,
Or to minimize others' suffering.
or to minimize
Through-
suffering of others.
Yeah, through selfless service.
Is that Buddhism or something like that?
I think it is a Buddhist philosophy.
Okay, yeah. Or something like that, let's say. And if I guess it kind of could put you in a state of constant suffering if you're thinking like something's wrong with me.
If you are, it could be kind of like that because it could feel like you're putting a magnifying lens on yourself. And then you're getting paranoid thinking, okay, what's wrong with me? Especially if you don't know what it is. And you just think like, oh, there's something wrong with me. That's going to keep coming up for you. So you're going to keep kind of running over the same old ground.
My mind is blown right now. Maybe we should cut it here. Anything else?
I think that's all, man.
All right. Thank you for coming on the pod, Nick. Mind is blown right now. What should we do now? Are you hungry yet?
I am hungry, yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
Yellow deli.
Hey.
Yellow deli.
Hey.
Yellow deli.
Yellow deli. Hi, relatives. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Nick, if you're still listening to this, thank you so much for coming on. Honestly, it was just great to sit down and have a visit with you and go for dinner after. We don't get the chance to do that enough, and just because life gets so busy, I suppose. But it was really a privilege to do that, and thank you for letting us test equipment on you. And you're the best brother a guy could ask for. I love you so much. For the listeners out there, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and comment, let us know what you think. Follow us on Spotify. Follow our socials, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that good stuff. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Kehew, I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Your ancestors are always with you. All my relations, Riel.